So, I think there might be a video somewhere on there of my 20-gallon tank with my other fish in it. This wasn't the way it was laid out before. It had the big tree in it in the other one. And so she gave me this rock thing, and I said, this looks really cool. I think the goldfish would really like it. So initially, the only fish that was in here was Mr. Peter, and now this guy's here. Uh, his name is Louie, named after one of my friends. Um, and so kind of chills, really cute, little dude. I don't know if it's a boy or girl. I never know with these things. Um, but they seem to like really get along really, really well. The little one follows him around a lot, and he just kind of best buds. They just hang out with each other all the time. They float around the tank together, and they're literally are just inseparable. It's adorable because that's all they do is they swim around together. Like they don't swim around separately very often. They just kind of follow each other around the tank a lot, you know. And it's cute to watch them try to just hang out together all the time, and then eat together. And I think that's the only time there's ever like an issue is when it's feeding time and like they're both eating over the food. But other than that, I mean, they get in there, and I the reason why, I mean, like it looks weird because it's like off centered from where the bubbles are at. But that's actually to stem the flow from where the water comes in from the filter. It's a filter for like a 30-gallon tank, I think. So it's a pretty powerful filter for this, but for goldfish, it's kind of needed. So that because I've noticed that they had a hard time swimming around the area, so I put that in to stem the flow. So it slowed down, so they weren't so stressed when they were eating, or when they were floating around, they wouldn't be so stressed out. And so I noticed a while back that they had been acting kind of sluggish, and I was really curious as to why, and it was because it was the beginning of like December, I think. I couldn't figure out why, and then I googled it, and I realized their tank was probably really cold. And all but they're goldfish, and they can live in some fairly cold water. They can live in some fairly cold water. They don't generally live in below 60-degree water, and they go into more like hibernation mode. And so I accidentally, because I didn't realize and think about it, my house generally it's about 60 degrees, so their tank is going to be colder than that. And I didn't really think about it, and so I did the temperature on it, and it was almost below 60, so they were getting pretty cold. And so I feel really bad about it. But as you can see, they have the heater from my 10-gallon in there. Actually, it's for my 10-gallon. And actually keeps the water, so ridiculously, it keeps it in like just around 70, I think, 70 to 72. Does a really, really good job on keeping the water at the right temperature. And I'm really impressed since it's a tiny little heater, but it puts out a lot. And they just kind of hang out and float around. And so they seem to really enjoy the 20-gallon tank. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot of space for some fairly small fish at this point. I mean, eventually they're going to get big enough that I'm going to have to move them into... I was thinking about a 36... I saw a 36-gallon tank at PetSmart today, and it's got this curve thing going on that I really like. I think these guys would really like it. So when they get big enough, and obviously I'll eventually have to get them a new tank, I'll probably put them in a 36-gallon to float around in. But until then, I mean, they've got plenty of time to grow up. They're still fairly small for being in a 20-gallon tank by themselves. I know they say 1 to 2 gallons per inch, and I mean, this guy's maybe 2 inches. The other one's not even, I would say, about an inch long max. And so total It's not very much. They've got plenty. They've got 10 gallons each to float around in. I mean, minus the maybe a gallon for the rocks, but um, they kind of enjoy just spending it together. You know, they float around a lot and they do their thing, and they're very cute, and I appreciate them. They're very pretty. I specifically saw him, little guy, and I said, "Wow, you look so much like my other fish." You know, I didn't mean to get another goldfish, but I mean, it's fancy, but and then I plopped him in there, and I mean, obviously not just plopping him in there, but put him in there, and he immediately just snuggled up to him, and they've been best buddies ever since. And I just think it's adorable that, you know, he's a fancy goldfish, so obviously he can't swim nearly as fast, but the other guy seems to be content with just hanging out with him, so I'm really happy that they just chill out and they're okay with each other. And my other goldfish didn't seem to care for them. Like when I had other goldfish in here before they died. They were fair fish, so I mean I kind of expected at some point that they would pass, but yeah, these guys, when they were together, they didn't really care for each other. I mean, they didn't care; they just didn't hang out together like these guys do. Especially because I mean, they were literally in a 10 gallon tank. They didn't really seem to, you know. But now these guys are together, so thought I'd show you guys a little update on my tanks and my super lovely little 20 gallon here. And so I mean, maybe you've noticed, but all these rocks and stuff down here, it's my own personal collection of rocks, stuff that I find in creeks and like, you know, when I'm going out and I'm out with friends, and like, you know, I went up to northern part of my state, and we were floating the river, and I got some really, really cool rocks. I've had that black one for a long, long time. So some of these are new, some of these aren't. I have some in the other tank that are also from my trip, and like just like years of collecting rocks that I thought were cool. But I basically just, you know, like boiled some water, boiled them in the water for a little bit, made sure they were, you know, clean, scrubbed them off with a toothbrush, and made sure all the cracks and crevices and everything were clean. And just, yeah, so I mean, I made sure every part of it that I could, and was clean, and they seemed to be happy and content with having. I mean, it really gives them an adventure, because I didn't really think they'd care much for them, you know, just be around them at all. But I think they figured out at this point that food will float down and get trapped in between when I put it in through the top. It gets soaked into the water and it just comes down, but it'll get trapped in the rocks. So they've kind of made it a little adventure to go searching through the rocks, and so they tend to like to do that a lot, and I think it's adorable. So they'll go search through the rocks for some food. It's actually almost feeding time for them, so I'll feed them here in a minute. I usually feed them before I go to bed or hang out in my room, and they seem to be okay with that. And you know, when we have time, because I have an odd schedule, but wanted to show you guys an update on all my lovely fishies going on, and they've been really healthy and happy so far, and this guy is looking really beautiful, and I'm super excited to see how this guy grows up to look like, you know, because he's a pretty cool looking fish, and I'm excited to see him grow up and get a bigger tank. And I mean, I have a 10-gallon tank and oh goodness, what was it, 10-gallon, and I think it was a 5-gallon tank. So now so I have 2 other tanks that I might possibly put to use. I'm not entirely sure what for. If I want to do fish, if I want to do reptiles, I haven't quite decided yet. But I know some kids that might get to use them, not for fish though, because their mom says absolutely no to fish, but I think she'd be okay with some reptiles. So we'll see about that and see what kind of animal would really do okay in a 10-gallon tank. Maybe not, who knows? I'll have to look it up and see what kind of stuff can go on. But so far, these guys are doing really good. 20-gallon tank. I think I've had that tank since about September, the 55 since September. Had this one for over a year, So it's, you know, I've advanced so much in just 3 years of keeping fish, and it's crazy, crazy. I'm crazy lucky just to have people giving me so much fish stuff, and I love it. So I wanted to share with you guys.